All right, welcome back to the barn. So we're gonna make something today that lets us put this regular receiver on the back of the Deere. It just so happens that my uncle has a newer model Deere, but the rear of it is the same, the rear steel frame portion. And he wants a receiver on there to be able to move a trailer around, but he's limited on space, so he has to be able to take the ball in and out. So I thought, hey, if I could put this receiver on it and make it use some of the factory mounting points, it would be probably the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to start by taking off my rear bumper and attachment that I've got made here, and we'll use my tractor to fab up something for him. And then once we've got it fabbed up, hopefully it's just a simple bolt-on solution for his end. And then of course my bumper and such can go back on. So let's take this apart and see what we can come up with. So this is the back of the Deere. Now, those two access holes were added when I put the K66 rear end in. Those were advised with the instruction manual because it lets you get to the fill and the vent on the back end of it. So for servicing, it's a lot easier to just have access to those, so they kind of suggest you use a hole saw. That being said, my uncle's tractor has the same keyways cut into it for different accessories. And now my hitch was originally made from the weight bracket here, and it's just got those fingers. Those fingers basically slip and lock in, and then the weight bracket bolts up to some keywayed holes up top here. A carriage bolt just drops through, and that's what your anchor point is. So it was okay for the sake of just the weights, but once you start adding something like a hitch and the bumper and whatever else I was doing with it, it was so much stress that it bent the bracket, and it actually pulled it off one day. But I was doing things with this that I shouldn't have been. Like I was trying to pull barn beams or something. So with his, what I'm thinking to do is something similar. I'm not totally certain on the mounting practice yet, but some type of finger style hanger that lets this hitch latch in. And then it definitely needs to bolt in to at least those keyways up top. If I can get something to mount similar to this location would actually be pretty nice. It's out of the way of the wheels, which is good for clearance reasons, and it's still, if we can leave the hole at the bottom there available. I know he said he doesn't use it, but I'd like to try to leave it available, and I also want to try to do this without any drilling. So let's see what I can make up here. Maybe I can add some flat stock to this and make some little keys that drop in and latch. That would be the best practice. Even these through bolts for my mount, for my bumper, they're drilled in. I added these, so they're not going to be counted. They're not original, so I'm going to try to make this just a bolt-on feature. And I know he just plans to move an empty trailer. He's not going to be overusing it like I would, so let's see what we got floating in the stockpile and if we can't make something go. So I found some flat stock. It's been used for something. There's a bit of a bend in it, but I'm not too terribly concerned. The biggest part here is the thickness is perfect. It fits those keyways thickness-wise really well. I need to narrow it down, but I also want to cut out the sections that are all buggered up. So I'll probably chop the end off here, and then I'll reduce the size down to what I need these to actually be, so they fit the factory size holes. And then I think I'll try to bend the ends and basically weld them onto the bottom end of that plate on that receiver and make myself some fingers that latch into this. So that means that this receiver will kind of mount similar to what the original weight bracket does. Those fingers will drop into the holes, and then we'll pivot up 90 degrees, and then I'll have some form of a fastener that's gonna tie into these keyway holes. Maybe I'll take it this way. Haven't really decided yet which way I'm gonna set this up. If I do it like this, it might be easy to bolt up with some kind of bracket maybe from the front to the back here. That would give it a lot of support. Yeah, that might actually work out nice like this. Okay, I'll play with this. We'll come up with something to make it work. I kind of enjoy going into something with no plan at all. It makes it a little more fun to see what the end result will be. I think this will turn out good though. It should be plenty strong. All right, let's hit it. Okay, I think I have something beginning to work here. So those bent pieces of stock are clamped underneath. I'm just getting ready to tack weld some stuff. Gotta grind a bit of paint, but this bottom plate will drop into place, and then I'll have some kind of ties that'll go up to the keyways on the back of the tractor, and everything should just bolt on and push on without too much trouble and zero rework, which is the goal here. So I gotta grind some paint. I'll clamp this and make sure that it's all set. I'll tack weld and then we'll test fit. So it's spot welded now. That means I should be able to take the clamps off and confirm that this thing goes on and comes off as I hope it does. Beautiful. All right. So those fingers need to be final welded now, which is a lot easier to do off the machine. And I'll get out the big welder to do it, the bigger welder. It's capable of a little more penetration with the heat, because this little guy here is more of a toy. But once that's all set up and these are permanent welded, then I can start working on the bars that are gonna tie, somehow tie from this hitch mount up to the existing keyways in the tractor, and allow a through bolt, like a carriage style bolt, to be put in there and essentially hang the top end. So this will be mounted to the body of the tractor, I think to the frame there. It's definitely not gonna move. It's very slim. It doesn't stick out much further than the back tires do, if at all. I'm willing to bet that it's almost the same. This here, 7 1/4 inches. Not bad. And I don't know that his has the disengage rod for the drive, but even that has enough clearance to fit, so I think we're doing okay. 7 1/4. Just for fun, let's go off the rubber and see. 6 5/8. 6 7/8 maybe. So it's a little bit of hangout past the back wheels, but not by much. The big issue with his machine, my uncle's, is the limitation of space. Where he stores it in a shed, he's got to close the doors behind it, and he has almost no space to work with. So if the hitch hung out any further, it was going to be a problem for him. So this will be the slimmest option, because he can just pull the ball out and have all that space back. So I just used the big boy welder and got those fingers properly welded in place, no more tacks. So the existing slotted holes on the back of the body of the mower, those fingers drop into it. It's going to swing up into place here. Some slag I gotta clean off yet. Anyways, so it kind of just rolls up and in. And then the next thing I have to work on is gonna be a mount that's gonna tie somewhere from the hitch itself up to those keyway holes to let the typical like carriage bolt drop through and out, and then just bolt and washer. So it'll be 2 bolts to put this whole hitch on, but it should be more than strong enough, because that steel's got quite a bit of strength to it, the fingers I created. They hold in there pretty tight, but I know he's not doing anything significant with his mower. He's just moving an empty trailer around, so shouldn't be bad. But yeah, we'll see how it all pans out when it's finished, but I'll probably use more of that flat stock bar that I have just sitting there and fab up some kind of hanger for it. So let's see. I went and picked up some hardware. I needed a few carriage bolts with some nuts and washers, so now that I've got those, I can drill out the size hole I need for those fasteners. And then once I've got these 2 drop bars built and bolted onto the machine, then we can basically tack weld them in place and get everything ready for final welding and testing and all that stuff. So we're close to the end here. Gonna drill me a couple of holes. All right, good enough. Next. Okay, this is gonna look a little bit crude because it's still in the early stages, but I mean, the fingers work awesome. Everything slides into place like it should. So the very top, if you guys can see up in here, there's basically keyways cut in. Original hardware to this tractor uses a carriage style bolt with a square head, drops into the slotted hole and gives you a bolt attachment point. And then for example, the weight bracket then just hangs up on that, good to go. Now, what I'm proposing to do is something a little bit different here. I'm basically wanting to have these pieces of stock hung from the back end of the tractor, kind of like that. Let me put the washers on because I'm gonna just give the nut a bit of a turn to hold everything there. And essentially what I'm imagining here is welding these drop bars or links or whatever we're going to call them to this bottom plate. So I'll be able to weld from the back side on the top, weld to the plate. I'll be able to weld from the bottom to the plate, and I'll be able to weld to the top portion from these drop bars. That's quite a bit of contact, and it's all for downward force because the only thing that those need to do is just keep the tension upward there. I think it's gonna be just about perfect. Like, I could go more elaborate and try to bend the flats out and weld them underneath so it's holding, but I don't think I need to. I really think this is gonna be more than sufficient like this. So I'm probably gonna get some paint scraped off and try to get this tacked up in place with the fasteners snug, see how everything works, and if I'm happy with it, finish weld it. Because this is about as simple as it could possibly get, and there's not gonna be much of any give on these drops where it could bend out of place. Like the original bracket I've got on mine, I think this is gonna be stronger by all means, but it's not gonna be used for anything nearly as severe as what I do. So I think we should be in a great shape here. So I'm gonna clean some paint and we're gonna tack weld and see what happens. Well, once I grind some paint, I think that's going to be the best possible solution. I will clean some paint on the bracket. I will I will bend and tighten these angles a bit and weld them so they're tight. I can actually weld them once they're in because of the access I have, which is wonderful. Let's see. I think that's going to give me probably the best hold I could ask for. So I ground the paint away and I've prepped for a spot weld on the one on the right hand side. I still have to do a bit of work on the left before it's set to go, but I want to tack this one in place and then I'll unbolt the other one and all that stuff. But I'm going to get it tacked and I'll probably finish weld it, grind off the excess off the back end there that's not needed, and we'll go from there. But all right, I just blew the breaker trying to spot weld out in the barn, but I've got them both spot welded up now. I still got to cut off the excess that's hanging out the back. It's not much, but I'll probably do that before I take it off the machine because it's good and solid. And then we'll take this off, we'll take it to the house, I'll finish weld it all. It's all gonna be welded up wherever it, so all the cuts I made into it will get welded. And it'll get welded to a plate from the bottom side and from the back corner here. I just cut those edges off flush, so they're good and hot right now. But let's take these fasteners off. Just see, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult to get the swing right, to get this thing right off and on. But they are fitting into a slotted hole, like the fasteners. The machine has the slotted hole, so there's a bit of give there and some play that you can kind of wiggle everything into place. But if it ends up being a bigger problem than I think, I can always enlarge the holes on these supports, and then that gives me even more leeway to play with. I like it. That is not too bad at all. Final welding is all done. Still needs paint. It's not that pretty, but naturally that's my style, if we haven't already realized this. Okay. It lines up pretty good, so I'm going to put the bolts in. We're going to put this mower on the ground. I want to put something in the receiver, and I want to put some weight on it and just see if we get much flex out of it. I really, if anything's going to give, it's going to be the keyways will bend. But actually, funny, mine are already bent. Not a surprise, but that's just how I treat my stuff. The bolts have to be put in from the back, or have to be put in first, and then the bracket has to be pushed up in place. So that's the downside. I think the original equipment is a slotted hole here where you can kind of put it all together first, but whatever. Considering it's homemade barn style, I think we'll be all right. This ratchet is not exactly happy to be here anymore. Perfect. All right, let's put it on the ground and see what it's made of. All right, I've got about a 6-foot bar in the back of this thing just to see what it can do. Obviously, this is not a typical test. This is not representing any amount of force you would normally see on this hitch, but pushing down on the end, and this would be a grossly overloaded trailer. It gets pretty tight. It looks like the actual plate for the entire hitch that it was manufactured with is what's flexing there. I also worry that those fasteners, they're not that large. It would probably shear the fasteners or possibly bend a keyway out of the mower and tear them out that way. Nonetheless, this is going to be ideal. And the stick out from this is almost none. Considering where the back of that hitch stops, it barely sticks out past the machine, so it should be pretty easy for him to keep this thing in the barn or in the garage or in the shed or wherever it is. And it only bolts on with 2 bolts. About as easy of an install as I could have made it. They're using factory style hardware and factory type locations for mounts. So paint, she's done. Thanks folks for checking this one out. So go. I got tons more stuff I need to be doing outside, inside, under the house, in the house, but not sure how much of it's going to become videos. I've got some Yukon stuff I haven't finalized, but hopefully I'll get to it shortly and be able to upload something for your entertainment and a little bit of learning there. But I appreciate everyone checking this stuff out, and if you have a moment to hit like and leave a comment, it's always appreciated. Give me a shout out. Let me know what you think of this, if you think it's good enough for what we're trying to do here. So we'll talk to you guys later. See you around on the next one. Cheers. So I took it back off the lawnmower, and now it's going to get a coat of paint. So hopefully it doesn't rust up too quickly, but otherwise it's basically ready to go. 2 bolts and you're in. So you got a 1/2-inch ratchet and you can install this thing on your Deere. Pretty simple design, should be a little more robust than whatever was, but for now I've got my old hitch back on my machine because this is how I run my weights along with everything else. Reality is it could use some updates and some welding too, but I don't feel like it today. I had some other stuff to weld, so I've done that and finished up and blown the breaker I don't know how many times, but for today, that's a good enough amount of work.